Welcome to the War Room. Stephen K. Bannon. We're live from Capitol Hill. It's the 17th of November, the year of our Lord 2020. John Fredericks Radio Network on Real America's Voice.news. That is the my phone's blowing up here. That is the streaming platform for the Trump Revolution. Is also Dish Channel 219 and Comcast in Chicago, Channel 113. And, of course, Newsmax TV, G News, G Media, in Mandarin, blown throughout the world. The diaspora of the Chinese people make this one of the largest shows in the world. And, of course, everywhere else, YouTube, everywhere else, Pluto TV. And one of the largest podcasts, not just in this nation, but globally, with over 19 million downloads. Okay, now I want to turn to, we just left Nevada and Kylie Jane setting up this rally in Georgia. I just want to re-emphasize to everybody, if you're in the region, you will do your children a world of good, a great civics lesson, and a great lesson in patriotism to take them. I know so many people that came Saturday, and the only thing that people said they wish someone had done is said, I wish I brought the kids, right? I thought it was going to be I didn't know it was going to be. I thought maybe Antifa would be doing something, so they didn't bring them. A lot of people did bring their children. Bring your children. They're expecting 20 to 25,000 at the Georgia Capitol, state capitol. And John Fredericks going to be covering it live. We'll be doing the pregame live 10 to noon like we did last Saturday. Just an extraordinary event, extraordinary group of people. So make sure that you're part of it. Now I want to turn to the People's Pundit, big data polling, a guy who gave really an epic performance on election night for 8 hours, 8 or 9, 10 hours, Richard Baris. Richard, I want to take you out to Nevada right now. They start off the press conference. You got Adam Laxalt, the former Attorney General from the Laxalt political family, which is very highly regarded out there. You've got Matt Schlapp from the American Conservative Union, the CPAC guys. You've had Rick Grinnell out there, the hammer that President Trump brought into DNI to sort things out there. And they've already found, I think, 15,000, either some combination of people who are not eligible to vote because they don't live in the state anymore, and the honored dead who somehow, we believe in eternal life. I guess they believe in eternal voting out there. Jack Maxey makes the statement that, hey, maybe not the people that voted inadvertently that didn't know the thing, but whoever voted for the dead, these are felonies. So can you walk us through the math? We have you on here today. We had Cortez early this morning in the morning show go through his version of it. But today, in this hour, we want to take people where we actually sit as far as the doability of all this, and are these things certifiable or not? Let's start in Nevada, where the campaign is throwing down hard on a major new lawsuit that they're just announcing, even as we speak.
Yeah, so these records are verifiable. So these are the change of address flags that I've been trying to highlight. And basically what it means is, or at least most of them they're saying, what it means is that these people have left the state of Nevada, they have change of address flags or forwardable addresses, and yet they still cast a ballot in the state of Nevada. This is the way our system is. It's imperfect. It takes time for the state to catch up to whether you're dead or you're gone, but it can and does happen. And this is what we have been trying to point out. Again, this 15,000 number, Steve, is half of Biden's margin almost in the state of Nevada. So, I mean, I'm sure there's more digging to do there. But this is what I was warning about, because Clark County may be 68%, 7 in 10 of the votes that are cast statewide in that state, but they're 85% of the dirty rolls, what we call the dirty rolls. So change of address flags, dead people, for whatever reason, not eligible to vote, because being registered in the United States of America is not the same as being eligible to vote in the United States of America. That's just the reality of our system. I'm not surprised to hear this at all. I'm really not.
So where does that put us now? If there's 15,000 in question, walk us through your math. And I want to walk through the math on kind of game day and how this evolved over time. I think they said there's 500,000 votes, 500,000 votes by mail in Nevada. Can you walk us through where we actually stand with the math today and where we stand with the certificates?
Yeah, so Clark is basically chunked in, although they've been trickling. There's votes out in Washoe. I don't know if people can see it, but I'll walk them through it. There's votes out in Washoe County still. That's really where Reno is. That's if a Republican wants to win the state, they have to fight that roughly to a draw, and then they have to get about 45% of the vote in Clark County. Trump is sitting at about 44% in Clark County right now. And out in Washoe, if these votes did come in, if there were irregularities and some of them get thrown out, then that would put him roughly even in Washoe. He got a big rural vote, which I do understand they still have some stuff out in Lyon that hasn't been counted. This was the Wild West of moratoriums on election integrity laws. This was almost everything the Democrats wanted, they got in this state, including not only allowing ballots to come in for 2 weeks, Steve, but harvesting. They even gave from the taxpayer about $300,000 to harvest ballots during the 2020 primary, and those people are still around. So this was the worst case scenario for Republicans. So the ballots were flying everywhere out there before. I don't know how they certify it with this kind of a lawsuit out, because again, this is verifiable. You could easily call somebody like me. I could pull the change of address and you could cross it. It's easy to check.
What do you mean harvesting? I thought harvesting is not outlawed in Nevada. It
is. Indeed, it is outlawed in the state of Nevada, and Clark County just skated it. This is the worst case, but we have seen this kind of ignoring of the law basically everywhere. And in Georgia too, they were harvesting under the guise of curing, but they were harvesting and nobody did anything about it. So we have seen this before in other states, and this is one of the worst case states. It is. That's what I mean when I say we use COVID as a predicate to put a moratorium on these laws. Some of them long-standing, have been black and white for years.
So where do we stand with the 15,000 that are being questioned? And what Laxo was saying is they just started their due diligence. This is just the first pass, I guess, or the first systematic pass. Where do you think this ends up? Even in the discovery phase of this lawsuit, I mean, right now, what's the gap? What is the gap between Trump and Biden in Nevada right now?
Yeah, that 15 is almost half of Biden's margin. It's about 34,000, and that is what I understand too. That was low-hanging fruit, and that's some of the stuff we're doing in other states where we'll go right to those change of address. We'll pull a random sample out of them, because if it's random and we find irregularities often, then that means it's highly likely that there are more irregularities. So I understand that's what they did as well. And going down now that Secretary of States are starting to release those lists of people who actually did vote, whether or not that absentee ballot was rejected or not. Then we're at a point now where we could really start to verify this, because we were getting the runaround. We could tell when somebody submitted a ballot. But what some of these Secretary of States were trying to say, Steve, is that, well, that dead person voted, but it didn't count. So, I mean, somebody still voted for them, right? So that was always number one. They wanted to outwardly dismiss that because this record didn't count or that record didn't count. But we're at a point now where we're talking about too many records for them to use that as an outright dismissal. That's number one. And first of all, who cast these votes? Who did it? We're not talking about a few hundred votes.
Rich, I want to ask you a question, and you may not have the answer to it. A lot of the people in the live stream who have relatives, family members who are now passed away in Nevada are asking, is there any way I can check to see if my parents or my aunt or uncle voted?
Yeah, in some states they do have tracking ballots, but I believe in Nevada you can only do that through absentee, and they're behind. So it may not show up in the log yet. We're getting tons of emails from people asking, hey, can you check and see whether or not we voted. Some of that will start to update in the voter file, so they'll get a little Y or an N next to their name to tell us whether or not they did or did not vote. They can track some. It depends if it's election day. That's much harder. Even in Georgia, we're still not able to get a good list of who did and did not vote on election day. Or basically in person. So it really depends on the state. If they're in that state, the absentee ballot is the best way to go, but good luck, because they're nowhere near up to date.
We've cut, just in this press conference, Biden's lead in half, right? And of course, Biden, who wants to unite the country, has been of no help of this whatsoever. Is two things. Number one, with their lawsuit and getting into having discovery and due diligence, will it? Is your thinking that it'll overcome what Biden's lead is? Or are we in a situation now? This thing's just not going to be certifiable, given all the egregious activity and lack of control. And what about this 135,000 at this local race that was thrown out already? Does that imply that you're not going to be able? Can you explain what happened there? And does that imply that you're not going to be able to certify this? So they're just not going to be able to submit a slate of electors for Biden or for Trump. They're just not going to be able to certify it.
Yeah, that would be the best. That is the best path for Trump's campaign moving forward, to just make that case, because I don't know how you could. And again, we talked about this a little bit earlier. They threw that down ballot race out. I don't know how you do that and not at least put a finger on the pause button at the presidential level. If you have enough evidence of irregularities that you toss out a down ballot race, then how could you possibly move forward with something as important as the presidency? So, I wouldn't be surprised by anything anymore, but that just sounds crazy to me. I don't know how you do that without parsing out the difference in these. But that would be about half of Biden's margin. It would. And I'm telling you, this is why media outlets should not close the book and run away with this thing, because there's enough out there now. You have to settle this. People have to settle it and get to the bottom of it, no matter what the outcome is, because people have to feel good that at least there was some due diligence here to go over it. There's just too much out at this point to try to just paper over it and move on.
Okay, we're going to
certify anything.
We're going to hold the other states till we come back from the break and go. But I got to ask you one question. Given every different aspect, from people out of state voting to the dead rising to vote, to a supervisor election, wherever 135,000, I think of 330,000 that were eligible, thrown out. Of all this different madness of people, not even requesting the ballots just being, I heard, stacked up at people's homes, because since the strip got shut down, a lot of the union people have left. The mainstream media and Ralston out there, I think the columnist for the local paper, and no offense, Sheldon Adelson, the editorial page, it was in Trump's face a week ago that you lost this. It's time for you to just concede and move on. And Ralston, I think the columnist out there, has been vicious. In the mainstream media, this to me is a major victory for Trumpism, the Trump movement, everybody that watches this show, and obviously the President of the United States. But Richard Baris was telling you this on election night, right, at 2 a.m. He said this thing in Vegas, this thing in Nevada stinks to high heaven. Why has even Adelson in that paper and Ralston been after the president when your called shot was this thing is a nightmare and you're never going to get to the bottom of it until you start doing discovery?
Yeah, I think there's an appetite out there to cover this up. I think a lot of people just don't want Americans to know how ugly this system is, how dirty and ineffective and how easily corrupted it could be. We get a lot of emails, Steve. One of them in Nevada sticking in my head. This woman just kept getting ballot requests sent to her from the person who had her phone number previously. He's gone. He doesn't even live there anymore. And yet he had duplicate records. She tried to even have him removed, and they wouldn't do it. They made a mockery of it. I think in the media, there's an appetite to close the book because they don't want Americans to know how bad this is. This is a serious problem.
Richard, we're going to take
a serious problem. We have to fix it.
We're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to return and get your analysis in the other states. But Nevada, for the Trump movement, understand the cavalry has arrived. You got Adam Laxalt, Matt Schlapp, guys like Rick Cornell throwing down hard, discovering that the dead still vote. Be back in a moment.
And you are over, 'cause we're taking down the CCP. Spread the word all through Hong Kong.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Breaking news out of Michigan. We're going to get more details. Washington Post headline, Deadlock Board in key Michigan county fails to certify vote totals by deadline. Remember, the thing in Michigan today is going to be at the local level. They're going to do the certifications, not the state level, but the local level. But guess what? Republicans out there saying, we got to go through this thing. Just, by the way, Jack, in 2000, right? All they're doing is whining every night on Rachel Maddow. They're whining every night on things. Oh, he's got to do transition. Got to get security briefings. What happened in 2000?
Well, in 2000, when we had the argument between Gore Bush, and we actually went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they keep arguing that the president is obligated to pay for the transition through the GSA. Well, to make it very clear for all those people listening out there, number one, the media never complained about it. This was pointed out in a wonderful article today by Greenfield in Front Page Magazine. But number three, they never paid a single dime until the day after the Supreme Court made their decision. They declared on numerous occasions and in testimony that they could not do this under the law until they had proper certification.
December 14th. Because remember, the Supreme Court met on the 12th.
I think they met on the 11th. They gave the ruling on the 12th.
And then that night, on the evening of the 12th, I think is when Gore conceded. I think the next day they got everything squared away. And the 14th, the Electoral College met. Guess what? Same numbers we're talking about. December 14th, ladies and gentlemen, is when Georgia shows up and can't certify the vote. When Nevada shows up and they can't certify the vote, so no electors show up. Pennsylvania can't certify the vote. In the Wolverine state, Michigan can't certify the vote. Can't certify the vote. It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. Those that came before us that we have an obligation to figured this out. They had a little problem in 1800, right? Ended up with Burr, the vice president, shooting Hamilton in a duel, right? Little anger left over from the 1800 election. Little payback. In 1876, the same thing. That's where we got the rules of the game today. Contingent election in the House of Representatives. Here's what's the beauty of it, ladies and gentlemen. Nancy Pelosi, that big old gavel, like she's sucking on a lemon, she's going to bang in Donald Trump's the affirmation of his victory on November 3rd. The affirmation of his victory. So don't get down in the mumble tank. We're winning here. We got Rudy and Court. They're going into the 5th or 6th hour up there in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. You got Adam Laxalt throwing down hard, already figured out, already identified, just doing the voter rolls, 15,000 illegal ballots. The Democrats can only win by cheating. You can only win by cheating. How did that happen? Right? Only win by cheating. In Georgia, you're cutting side deals that change the whole makeup of the election, totally against the Constitution. Only state legislatures can do it. And you got these senators down, these state senators go, I didn't know anything about this. And it's not a small deal. It's 5 pages, it's fine print. Every comma in that deal is highly negotiated by the governor and the secretary of state, who now just want to move on. Now let's just move on. We're not moving on. We're an immovable object. The Trump movement is an immovable object. And one of the reasons is they got guys like Richard Baris been sitting there going, hey, this thing in Nevada is a mess, right? We said that this is the 2-week anniversary of Joe Biden's defeat. His defeat. Because on the 3rd of November, he was beaten. It's when you woke up in the morning that all the uncertifiable, unverifiable, no chain of custody, no chain of title ballots just appeared out of nowhere in the dark of night. This is when Democrats have to do it, in the dark of night. At 4:30 in the morning in Wisconsin, in Michigan. You go to bed, 800,000 vote lead in Pennsylvania. And I will never forget Richard Baris's final words to me about, hey, tell the campaign, nobody should go to bed. Richard Baris, he was born at night, but he was not born last night. Okay? What did Baris say? Bear, 3 o'clock, we're all dead, we're freezing. And Baris goes, do not go to sleep. Okay? Because when Good Morning America comes on, it's going to look a little different. Baris, I don't know how you knew that, but brother, you nailed that one. I get it. I kind of fell asleep. I rolled over and looked, and Baris was lighting me up at 4:35 in the morning, I guess, when they started announcing. Richard, let's go now. I want to hold Georgia. I want to go to Pennsylvania. Rudy's in there fighting at 74 years old. How old is Rudy? 74 years old. He's fighting. It's in his 6th hour of arguments in this federal district court in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. And in the middle of it, they drop a bomb. I'm sure this is another thing, just random. There are no conspiracies, but there are no coincidences. Right before Rudy's going to present, the state Supreme Court drops a dime on him that, hey, we looked at Philadelphia, we looked at this thing, no problem. It was all done according to plan, right? All done according to plan. 5-2 vote, exactly on party lines. Just a random observation. Richard Baris, walk us through the math in Pennsylvania. How do we get in the situation where Joe Biden, with these mail-in ballots, he's now up 40? He's at 50,000 right now? Up 50,000, I think, 52,000.
Yeah, it's actually continuing to go a little 70,000. This is really
it's 70. Of course,
what
it
we
is.
expected would happen.
Of course, it is.
Yeah,
naturally.
we just can't stop the trickle. So, right, and really,
they manufactured them. We said they vote by the ballot out there. They manufactured them. Let's go ahead and count them. We don't care. Count them. They're all going to get thrown out anyway, right?
One thing, Richard,
this.
Go ahead, mate.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'd love to get your sense, just because you're such a wonderful mathematical mind. It seems to me that we could start to find some real visual consistencies, because we know these ballots were not individually filled out. It was some guy sitting in his kitchen filling out hundreds of them. And I don't care how good you are. If we optically scan, say, the whole state's ballots, I'm sure you're going to start finding patterns of marking and even signatures that are going to start to identify the same hands doing multiple ballots. Is there any effort in that regard anywhere? I've mentioned it many times.
Yeah, I actually spoke with somebody who's involved with the legal team in Georgia, and that's what they have people telling them, people who were there that were later thrown out. He said, look, those signatures, that's the same stuff for the last 10 ballots, let me take a closer look at that. And they wouldn't let them. So this is really where we're at. And in Pennsylvania, the only valid vote is the one we heard about, those naked ballots. There could be 100,000 ballots thrown out because the signatures weren't verified correctly, and that never happened. And now they toss those envelopes. The only way to know whether that's a valid signature is by comparing it to the signature on the envelope. So it really could be the poll worker's signature. It could be anybody. It could be, Santa Claus's signature. That's why we have these procedures. And the reason why I told everybody to stay up at night is there really is no good explanation for asking the courts to circumvent the legislature and getting them to do this by some kind of executive fiat. And that's what happened. And it's the 5-2 vote we saw today. It's the same as the 5-2 vote that we saw that allowed this to go forward. And in the end, it happened exactly as I would say was planned. I mean, there's no innocent explanation for this. And so what we can do now is start Pennsylvania. We can't, because there aren't other big statewide races. But in some of these other states, what we're doing now is starting to take real close looks at the undervotes. So that could give us some patterns. There's only two reasons for significant differences in vote shares between other statewide candidates and the president's ballot, and that is ballot design, and that is tampering. I mean, those are the only two serious explanations.
When you look at the analysis, how did the mathematics of how he overperformed, Biden overperformed on just single ballots, just voting for him, vis-a-vis Barack Obama and other people, does that put it outside the mathematical possibilities of really being able to happen? I mean, when CNN says you got to be evidence-based, isn't that the evidence you're looking for?
Yeah, I have a hard time swallowing some of these numbers. I do, because some areas, Atlanta, for instance, you got to take into consideration that there has been population growth in Atlanta. So maybe that you have to factor that in when you're looking at it. But in a place like southeastern Pennsylvania, there is not. In fact, we would have expected that what they told us on election night, that about 650 by the time the bell rang. So maybe they're a little bit off. There's 40 or 50,000 more ballots. That's Philadelphia. So we're looking at roughly the same number of votes that Hillary Clinton got. Instead, we did not get that. We're still seeing 70,000 get chunked in like it did 16 hours ago in Philadelphia. And, of course, that went 95-5 for Joe Biden. In Bucks County, The margin is about the same as it was in 2016. There needed to be 3 or 4 days of absentee ballots trickling in to get Bucks County to look like it did in 2016. Why? Because Trump was up in Bucks County before all of this continued to go on after Election Day. So really look at Philadelphia, look at Milwaukee, and even Wayne, but it is possible you can make the argument that Hillary didn't get a lot of historical votes out of Wayne. But some of these other areas, I just have a hard time believing it. Joe Biden had no get-out-the-vote operation, guys. None. Nothing. Nothing. He had no enthusiasm at all. I've never seen anything like it. It was worse than Hillary Clinton. Worse.
Richard, why don't you hang on? We're going to take a short commercial break. I want everybody to know they can get us. We're building a community here. You're the most powerful audience in the world. Go to #WarRoomPandemic, @WarRoomPandemic, or go into the live stream and let us hear your comments. And you can get us on America's Voice.news. You can get us on the warroom.org page. You can get us on YouTube. The America's Voice guys do a tremendous job. I want to thank them and the John Friedrich Radio Network for helping us co-produce this show. Okay, we're going to take a short break. It's Fog City Midge, Jack Maxey, Stephen K. Bannon. We're in the War Room. We have a very special guest, the top pollster in the conservative movement, the Trump movement, Richard Baris. Big Data Polling will join us in a moment.
Everything's just beginning, but the games you want to play, bring it on and now.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Richard, one of the questions people have for you is 2.6 million mail-in ballots. I think that's the sum total that came in now. The 2.6 million keeps increasing, but 2.6 million. I think they've only had 951 total in the state. I don't think it's just in Philadelphia. Just in the state have been rejected for the naked ballot situation. And I know they're arguing about some counties got to cure it, but just given the fact that even with 200,000 in 16, they had 1%. And of course, these are going to be more and more marginal people who have never voted by mail before, so the number is going to be much, much higher. And they all got mingled in. Do you see any way in your professional mind that this vote in Pennsylvania, as you sit here today on the 17th with the clock ticking, and I think they're supposed to certify it in Pennsylvania by the 24th, so a week from today, is there any way that you see them being able to certify this vote?
Given their administration, maybe, because that's just who they are. We're talking about very political people, but I mean, that really depends on the president's legal team. He's going to go nowhere with that court, Steve. He's going to have to go somewhere. He's going to have to go higher than that. And that's why I have said I really do think his best option is to go to legislatures. In the past, 1%, 2%, that's normal ballot rejection. From what we have right now, it's about a quarter of that. So we're talking about 0.5% a rejection rate. That is very small. And in Pennsylvania, it's unique because once they removed, it's really double naked in Pennsylvania. And in other areas like Georgia, it's just the envelope. Once they removed those envelopes and threw them out, it's very difficult to uncover. It's very difficult to go back over that. A recount essentially would be feeding the same ballots to the same machines.
So that's my question. So how do you, you do this for a living. Our audience is just getting into this now. We try to get nomenclature, process, critical path. But the critical path is the vote's supposed to be certified by next week. You're then going to get the governor and you're going to get the legislature involved in all that. But they got a safe harbor in the 8th. And then the electoral college, the electors got to be put forward, the electoral college. And people are saying that 8th safe harbor may be movable. What ain't movable is the 14th of December. That is hardwired in. So how do you see this? If the ballots were all mixed up, walk me through how do you put the genie back in the bottle and actually be able to count these things so that you can get to a certified vote?
That should be his argument, though, Steve. You can't. Not in certain groups of the ballots we're talking about. There was really no way to do that now. So his argument, his best argument, is to drag it out, push those dates back. I just don't trust people in black robes to interfere. The courts have showed a unwillingness to want to interfere when we're talking about vote totals that big. He's got to build the case and then take it to the legislature. I really do believe that's his best bet because, everybody says, well, this will go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has demonstrated a very hands-off approach here. So I'm not saying it's not a viable path. It's just not the only one you want to leave yourself with, right? So in the end, when it comes to those, but specifically those ballots in Philadelphia that they didn't allow anybody to watch and they threw those envelopes out, that's the argument you have to make. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. You can't.
682,000.
That's why we have deadlines. That's why we have oversight. You're not supposed to do that.
682,000 ballots. Okay, I want to go to Michigan. We just read you the Washington Post breaking story where this major county in Michigan all the counties were certified today. They have not certified this. Walk us through what's happening in Michigan.
Yeah, so there's some local, and there may be more, I don't know, but there's some local pushback there. So people are they're taking their job seriously. And for the most part, I think a lot of people will just try to move forward with this. But in some areas, they are going to meet resistance. And one failing to certify, Steve, is really no different than all of them. They cannot do a statewide certification until everybody gets on board. So you get one, it's a small victory, but it's a pretty big one.
The people are saying that the Democrats are saying you're so far outside the range of possibilities here. Unless you can start to really give, and we know we've had Dave Coleman on from the Great Lakes Justice Center, who's in state court, and he's trying to get to the Supreme Court because the appellate court wouldn't even hear his appeal. He's got pretty strong affidavits, right? But unless you can show those vans showing up or something in the Dominion system, because Dominion's already flipped one county, right? How are you going to offset the 142,000, or does this get down also to a question of how do you actually certify it?
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that. Unless it was some kind of you're talking about the software itself, really impacted across the state, because then that absolutely could erase margins very quickly if there are glitches like we saw in Antrim County. If that was some kind of systemic statewide problem, then that margin is nothing compared to that. But right, Michigan is a tough lift. Looking at just alone affidavits, it's a tough lift. That's why really it's about making the case and telling the legislature, look, this was irreparably harmed here. This vote, the integrity of the vote was compromised. That is the only way to go forward. I really don't think a judge is going to say, no, because a van pulled up, we're going to toss the ballots that way between this time and that time. And some of the things I'm hearing from some of the other people out there, I just don't see it. I don't see that as realistic. You have to tell something akin to what was going on in Florida in 2000, which Karl Rove didn't even know about. The legislature can simply step in, and there's just no way to parse out the vote in Miami-Dade. Even if Al Gore found another 600 votes, it would not have mattered at that point, because the Florida legislature, enough of them, had enough. They had enough.
I want to go now to Georgia. We've been covering Georgia. John Fredericks has moved his operation down there. Jenny Beth Martin, they're going to have a huge rally this week. Georgia I want to bring up because on election night, there's a point in time you said, hey, in all your analysis, you're saying, hey, I think we got a 6 to 11 point win here, and then all of a sudden an explosion, I think 850,000 mail-in ballots. I mean, of a scale that is just breathtaking, right? What happened in Georgia that this bomb of mail-ins that they didn't have any kind of registration for it. Nobody knew about it, because not just you, but because we were doing the show live, I was checking with other people. Everybody at that time said, oh, you guys were so worried about Georgia, nothing to worry about. We got a 3 to 6 point win, and maybe even some people were saying double digits. How did they hold back so that nobody knew they were even in the system, these mail-in votes to just drop? And what's your assessment of Georgia right now?
Yeah, that's another mess, right? But this is why we did think Georgia in the end would go from the president pretty comfortably, because this is an area, unlike Philadelphia, this is an area where there is population growth. So a reasonable estimate, right? 15, 18%, that's not what we saw here. We have seen vote increases for Biden in the Atlanta area and the surrounding suburbs. Just that I'm talking about compared to Hillary Clinton's margins, her total votes, not margins, her total votes we've seen increases that exceed what we would normally see for population. So when these ballots were just out there, when you're reporting that you're 95% in, but you have 15% of the total vote in that county still outstanding or trickling in over the next couple of days. That's what happened in Georgia. Again, just spoke with somebody from the legal side of this down there. Without the verifications of those signatures, then we're getting some mistakes. We have already seen two pretty big mistakes. I mean, hard drives with thousands of votes on them. One netted 500 for the president. The other one netted 800 for the president. You know, how many counties are in Georgia? Do the math, folks, right? But really, the big deal here is that the signature verification, what Lindsey Graham was asking the Secretary of State about, that is the issue. And it will be the issue moving forward if it's not fixed right now, because there is no way to know whether that signature is valid or not.
But what they're doing right now, this recount is a waste of time and money. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, it is.
So what would you?
I do, and it will tighten the margin a little, but.
But so what would you recommend that they do? How do we get to the bottom of this?
Yeah, I mean, this is about following existing state law. I mean, this is not something maybe the state court will want to pick up, but this is a more friendly district than the district out in Pennsylvania. I could. It wouldn't surprise me if a federal judge did say, "Hey, look, people really do need to verify this. This is on the books. You can't circumvent this because of a pandemic." I could see that happening down there because the district is different. But again, they really need to get a handle on this. That is what Lindsey Graham was trying to do when he asked him about that. Hey, look, tell me, what is it exactly that is it necessary to be a vote that's counts, a legal vote? And he took it. I mean, really, this tells you everything you need to know, Steve. He took it as he was being pressured. While, I mean, the Senator Graham was just asking how it's done. That's how far apart these two groups are in the Republican Party.
Okay,
it's incredible.
I want to go back to election night. We just got a couple of minutes in this segment. We got one more short segment after this. But on election night, there was a time in that evening that Trump is up 800,000 votes in Pennsylvania. Trump is up hundreds of thousands of votes in Michigan. He's up 100,000 votes in Wisconsin. He's up massive in Georgia that you're talking about maybe a 6-point or north win. Let's leave Nevada and Arizona aside. But he's up massively in these states. And you say, don't go to sleep. What was, and tell the audience what you think happened between the hours of 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the morning that you would warn, Richard Baris would warn, with Trump with these massive leads, tell the campaign, do not go to sleep.
In my mind, I was thinking there's only one valid reason for making all of these changes leading up until the election. COVID, a symptom of COVID is not forgetting how to sign your name, right? A symptom of COVID is not having a ballot harvesting all of a sudden not being at risk. It was actually the complete opposite. If we're worried about social distancing, then we shouldn't be asking to lift bans on ballot harvesting. None of this made sense, Steve. It only makes sense if you're coming at it from a more cynical point of view, which is that there was no no honest explanation for asking for these moratoriums. They wanted to increase the pool, the potential pool. I have no doubt that they found that in Nevada. I have no doubt, because when you send out all of these records and they're, we're only human, right? And people do things that maybe are, that are stupid, that are against the law. They do. That's how human behavior is. That's why we have laws in this country. We have laws to protect ourselves from people who are willing to do things that are wrong. This is what I was afraid of. I really was concerned that they would use this, stop the counting, start to do some math, and then trickle them in. I really did.
Richard Baris from Big Data Polling. He is the People's Pundit, has a show on every day where he goes through his analysis of this. He's going to continue over through the commercial break. I want everybody in hashtag War and Pandemic in the live stream. We want to hear your observations, your thoughts. We're in the middle of it now, folks. This is what is called the fog of war. You got to be very clear about what the objective is, very clear what you're trying to do. Fighting on many fronts. Trump campaign threw down hard today in Nevada. Trump campaign's in federal court in Pennsylvania. Trump campaign is up in the grill of the state officials in Georgia, and they're calling for a massive rally at the state capitol on Saturday. And the one and only Jack Maxey saying, hey, let's start the recall petitions, okay? Let's have a couple of votes in January. Let's have a recall and a vote for the Senate. They're all, in Michigan, Republican officials are not certifying the vote in one of the most important counties of the state. And Richard Baris says, hey, if you don't certify a big county, guess what? You ain't going to certify the state. So this fight is all over. And the Trump forces are now galvanized, energized, and motivated. Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. Richard Baris will rejoin us on the opposite end of a short commercial break.
Just watch and see. It's all started, everything's begun, and you are over, 'cause we're taking down the
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
The pollster and analyst for the Trump movement and for the deplorables, Richard Baris, joins us, the People's Pundit. Quickly, I want to go to Wisconsin. Wisconsin is, what's your thoughts on Wisconsin? Because I'm hearing, although it's 20,000 votes, I'm hearing a lot of noise out of Wisconsin that there's a number of people there who want to move hard on a big lawsuit out there.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen. I mean, some of these people should understand that these leads in all of these states, Steve, are generally smaller than the leads that Trump had over Hillary in 2016. And we have seen Wisconsin's a bit of a unique situation because their recounts are a little bit different. But basically, that is not. I mean, 20,000 votes is nothing in a recount in Wisconsin. We have seen larger numbers of ballots get contested before in this state. So that may be one of the campaign's better shots, actually. It's not enough alone, electorally speaking, but obviously they're hitting this on multiple different fronts. They're not focused on one state alone. So, yeah, 20,000 votes. I've been saying this for a week. Wisconsin and maybe the best bet. If you see issues like we have seen in Georgia, and that comes to fruition in Wisconsin as well, there are counties where that could have a major impact.
Last thing I want to take you to is Arizona. Arizona was called when it was a 200,000 vote difference. I think now we're down about 10,000 or maybe even less, and they haven't even figured out what they're going to do on a recanvassing or how they're going to look to actually challenge some of these ballots. But I want to go back to something you said that continues to haunt me, that you said on election night when we were out there freezing about what happened when that was called by Fox and the momentum for the rest of the night. Can you go back to what your theory of the case is?
Yeah, well, I've said this from the beginning. I stick by this. That call was used as a way to take the air out of the president's sails, and counting stopped almost simultaneously. Arizona is one of the 6 states where counting stopped, but once Arizona was called, then the counting stopped. It almost didn't matter, right? So if the votes were still flowing in and people were still counting, then that call might have made less sense. But because they were able to get away with it, because there weren't, the votes were not being counted, they were not coming in anymore, because they were able to do that, then they essentially got away with that call, which was, I mean, look at how much closer, no matter whether the state flips or not. And I know the media has called it for Biden, but the GOP out there says it'll be 6,000 by the time they're done, which is, I'll believe it when I see it. But the point is still made. It's still valid. This has done nothing but move in the president's direction. On election night, he was demonstrating that he could win those margins to close gaps that big. And in fact, Biden's lead was not that big in the early vote. So it was just inexplicable. It was inexplicable. And what it did is allow everybody to take a step back, because it looked like the president was outperforming everywhere. And it allowed everybody to take a step back and say, well, hold on a second. He lost Arizona. It's a must-win state. So it took the air. It really did. It took the air right out of the sails.
With the mess down in Georgia, with the new lawsuit in Nevada,
Yeah.
with being in federal court and arguing on two cases, right? Two different sets of views, constitutional issue, and then also the thing about the kill zone of the kill rate of the mail-in ballots. With Michigan, with now Wisconsin, which you say may be the lowest hanging fruit we've got, and in Arizona.
Yeah.
Is the Trump movement? Are we wasting our time? Is the President of the United States wasting people's time? So he just concedes? Should we just throw in the towel and move on? Or do you believe, in your professional opinion, that there are enough states out here that are too screwed up to actually be certified, and that this could possibly not have 270 certified slates of electors for electoral college votes to actually deem Joe Biden president or President Trump on 14 December?
Yeah, so I'd say two things in response to that, Steve. One is that the National Republican Senatorial Committee may not care that much now, but they will if they don't stand and fight this here right now, because that will cost them. What I would say to them is that this is going to cost you your political careers anyway if you don't address this right now. That's number one. Number two, no, he's not wasting his time. Would Democrats give this up? Would Democrats and their supporters give this up? That's what I would say to people. They would not. These states are razor thin margins. There's a lot of irregularities that are just not going to go away. People are not going to forget about them. I honestly don't believe, I honestly have to say, I cannot believe that people don't want to let this stuff get hatched out. You cannot go forward with this many questions and expect that the country's just going to come together, sing Kumbaya, and reunite over the next 4 years. That's crazy. That's crazy. There's enough here to keep fighting.
Hillary Clinton said a month before the election, under no circumstances, is Joe Biden to concede. Under no circumstances. Have you seen, the last question for you, Richard, has the Biden campaign reached out and tried to solve any of these problems? Have they reached out and tried to participate in Pennsylvania or Georgia, where all these nightmares are? Have they reached out and tried to be helpful to this process?
No, not at all. And the officials are, I feel like, and I'm glad I get to say this because it's true, I feel like everyone's playing a bit of a game to run, like a run out the clock game. So in order to look at some of the things that we're looking at, we keep getting half bits of information, things that just seem like they would slow us down. So confirmations of who voted and did not vote, what was counted and what was not counted by absentee ballot in Michigan without birthdays, right? Stupid stuff like that. Joe Biden has not stepped up and said, you know what, be open, be transparent, let them do their thing, and let's move on. He should. That's something he should do. But it feels more like everyone's playing a run out the clock game.
Richard,
that's what it feels like.
How do people? What's the website, the show, and whatever social media they haven't pulled down of yours? What it would tell people how they get access to you.
Right. So the website is peoplespunditdaily.com, and we'll have the Georgia runoff results there too. We'll do the live results, and then of course I'm back on Twitter for now. Although PPD is not, but they can follow me at peoples_pundit on Twitter, and my wife too. She's still vaporized. So we'll see. See how long that lasts.
We're not going to run out the clock. We're going to drive this thing downfield. We'll be back at 10 o'clock tomorrow. I want to thank Richard Baris and his wife. By the way, the wife does all the work. Richard takes all the glory up front. He's the guy in front of the camera. She's actually grinding and back to getting all the work done. Thank you, the Barises. You're superstars. Okay, we'll be back at 10 in the morning, not running out the clock.